What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo Fantasy Football YouTube channel. And today I am with my good friend, Nick Lepri, and we are going to be talking some good vibes, bad vibes. This is really just an explanation of a few players who maybe don't have their full range of outcomes incorporated into their ADP. Nick, we have a couple polarizing players, I will say. I'm excited to get into this. How are you today?
I'm doing great this morning, and I'm very excited to talk about this topic as well. We do have a couple of players, like you said, that I think the comment section, the people that are watching this video, are going to have very strong opinions on either way. Maybe they really like these players, maybe they really dislike these players. I think that always makes for a good discussion.
And there's probably like 20 players we could put into this category, but we're just going to keep it to 5 today. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. And for the purpose of the video, we are going to be using Underdog ADP. So if the ADP on your particular platform is a little different, this is all from Underdog. We're going to kick this off with a polarizing player in Michael Thomas. And we just had our rankings debate show. We unveiled our best ball rankings late last week. And me, you, and Matt Savoca did a little debate show. One of the players that was most polarizing was Michael Thomas. He was ranked as high as wide receiver number 10 in your rankings. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he is a player with an ADP that largely can't be explained due to injury. You look at where he's coming off the board right now. Michael Thomas is wide receiver 31 with an ADP of 67. We know it's injury related, but talk to me about this player ahead of this season.
Yeah, so you said his ADP right now is 67. His ADP on May 11th last month was 55 and a half. So the ADP is moving down. People are starting to get very nervous about Michael Thomas, and it makes perfect sense. The reason why I am so high on Michael Thomas is because right now, where we are sitting in June, my belief is that Michael Thomas will be good to go, fully healthy by week number 1. If that assumption is completely wrong, then Michael Thomas might be the biggest swing and a miss in drafts right now. Now, his ADP is pick 67. So I feel as though people are now starting to almost bake in the fact that maybe he won't be healthy all season. Maybe he's
And
going to
we
miss some
just,
time.
yeah, we got some negative reports, and it's tough at this point in the season because it's June, it's early June, in fact.
Yeah.
So Michael Thomas not practicing right now is not like a huge concern. A lot of players aren't even attending mini camp and stuff. So this
Yeah.
might just be part of the progression. I mean, this is a guy that didn't have surgery right away on the ankle, and that's what caused him to miss the large part of 2 years. So I'm not raising the red flags yet. If this is August and he's starting to miss preseason games or what have you, then I will be concerned. But right now, I think this is very much according to plan. There doesn't seem to be a lot of concern from the organization. The concerns for me aren't just injuries. It's also that this team added Jarvis Landry and Chris
Mhm.
Olave. So you do have extra competition here, but neither of those receivers have really showed that bona fide number one receiving ability. Michael Thomas has led the NFL in receiving. Jarvis Landry has never done that. He's kind of like a souped up slot receiver at best. And Chris Olave is a player that was in the top 5 of this receiving class, but I think he had more concerns than anyone else from a production profile standpoint. He was well into the 30s in yards per route run in college, and he didn't force many missed tackles, create yards after the catch, not to mention he's a very slight receiver. So you can poke holes in both of those guys. To me, I think Michael Thomas is about right in terms of ADP, and I don't think we can say that about everyone on this list, but I'm trying to draft him right now in this range, especially with him falling. What do you make of him in drafts?
Yeah, right now I am not necessarily staying away from him. I'm just not going to draft him ahead of his ADP right now. I'm not going to reach up around to go ahead and get Michael Thomas. I am not someone who is super interested in reaching very high early on in drafts. Now, once you get past like round 7, round 8, when you're in that range, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm fine reaching. But early on in the draft, I try to keep pretty close to ADP. So right now, I'm not reaching on Michael Thomas. I'm fine taking him. I am just still slightly worried about the injury, but again, it's June, right? So
Did
we
you
don't
did
really
you
know.
move him down your ranks then?
No, but he will be moved down the rankings once Savoca gets back and I can adjust them.
I have him at right now coming off the board in my rankings. He's player 57, so I'm a little over ADP, and I'm comfortable taking a slightly overweight stance, but I'm more than in line with the field right now. But let's go to our second player, and this is an entirely different circumstance. We're going to stick with the wide receiver position, but we'll talk Christian Watson. And there's a lot of reasons his ADP can't really be explained just with raw projections. If you look at Christian Watson, ADP 108.9, wide receiver 52. He came off the board in the real NFL draft at pick 34. The Green Bay Packers traded up to get him after they missed on the run of initial receivers. He comes into the NFL with a questionable prospect profile. And, I think if we inserted Treylon Burks or Drake London or any of those top receivers into this Green Bay offense, we would be treating them as the number one. But Christian Watson came out of an FCS school where he wasn't very productive and he's old. All he got drafted on essentially is that athleticism, which is amazing, but he has a lot of growth to do in the NFL. And for that reason, he's kind of settled into this like pure wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range in drafts. But talk to me about Watson.
Yeah, Watson's ADP is also interesting to look at because May 11th, last month, he was going all the way at pick 172.33. Now he's all the way up at pick 108.40. And it seems like the graph right now, it went really up, right? By May 18th, his ADP rise all the way up to 98. And now it's starting to go, up to the 108s. But at the end of the day, I really do think that Christian Watson is in a super interesting situation because you can't really just try to do one of those things where you draft 2 of the top options on the receiving core because you don't know which one is going to be the guy, right? You can't draft Allen Lazard and you can't draft Christian Watson. That is basically impossible to do based upon where they're going right now at their current ADP. And right now, this kind of seems like a stay away situation for me unless I'm in a best ball draft and I'm trying to stack with Aaron Rodgers. Right now, I am a little bit nervous about who the number one guy is going to be, and I would not be surprised at all. I doubt you are with me on this, but I really think that maybe Amari Rodgers could be the number one receiver here. Maybe it is not Christian Watson. Maybe it is not Allen Lazard, and that is really starting to worry me. Now, where his ADP is, pick 100 plus, I'm fine taking him, but I am not 100% sold that he is the clear number one guy or even that Lazard is the clear number one guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sold any of them are the clear number one. If I was betting on one of them, it would be Lazard. He's the only one that has really any sort of meaningful recent production with the offense. You could argue Randall Cobb has had production with the team, but he has not had it in any semblance of in the form of the word recent. But, there is a situation where Green Bay trots out week 1, starting receivers, Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb in the slot, and Sammy Watkins on the perimeter outside of Randall Cobb or opposite Allen Lazard. And Christian Watson's a rotational player. There's other situations where, like Amari Rodgers, who's a 3rd-round pick last year, functions in the offense in some way, shape, or form. He had a terrible rookie year, didn't produce whatsoever, but we see these players take leaps at times. Lazard's a player that did so. Even Devontae Adams, when he was with the Packers, took a major 3rd-year leap with the program. Ultimately, this comes down to the receiving corps unsettled, and that's why the ADP is where it is, and that's also why he's a player that can't necessarily be explained by projection because there's a wide range of outcomes with his potential role in the offense. Any last words on Watson?
Yeah, Watson's also one of those guys where when you draft in June, you could be getting a humongous edge compared to when you are drafting in August if you're doing a best ball draft because Christian Watson's ADP could rise all the way up into, I would say, maybe like the top 70 players if all these reports are coming out that he's the number one guy. But you also could get screwed in the same way because maybe he's not playing too well. And then, boom, his ADP shoots back into the 130 range. So that's what makes best ball so interesting, especially drafting early. But in terms of fantasy football right now, I'm definitely waiting until August to really make my strong claim on Christian Watson.
We just heard Rodgers yesterday call Lazard the one, and we know how he feels about players he has developed rapport with over the years. But we've been referencing Underdog plenty in this video so far, and we're going to continue to do so all throughout the summer. That is because they are the best place to play fantasy football in the summer months. They just unveiled Best Ball Mania 3, which is a massive tournament that has $10 million in prize money. All you have to do is draft your team. That's it. There's no in-season management, no waivers, no trades. Underdog's just going to give you your best score every single week, and the highest score at the end of the year wins. Last year's Best Ball Mania championship team was drafted in June, so there is no time to wait. Also, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100 when you use the promo code Awesemo. That's good for 4 entries into the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament. All you have to do is head to underdogfantasy.com or to the App Store, or you could even just click the link in the description of this video. Use the promo code Awesemo and take advantage of that match deposit bonus. Let's go to another player with an ADP that is a little difficult to just explain by raw projections right now. It is Trey Lance. He is coming off the board, QB 11, pick 90.7. So the questions with Trey Lance, It comes down to Jimmy Garoppolo. Is he going to remain a 49er? Is he going to be the starting quarterback? We've had a couple little tidbits in the news recently this week. Jimmy Garoppolo, he was sent home from minicamp. Kyle Shanahan kind of brushed that off, saying he doesn't need to be here. He should be back in California, in LA. I think he's rehabbing. He should be in LA rehabbing a shoulder. No reason for him to be messing around with what we're doing in minicamp. But if you read between the lines, that could also be we're set on Trey Lance. There's no reason for Jimmy Garoppolo to be here because he's not going to be our starting quarterback. What do you make of the situation? And then the ADP of Lance, which is at 91.
Yeah, this is a very interesting situation. I think a lot of people, myself included, were also baking in the fact that maybe Deebo Samuel was going to leave. Like at points, it really did seem like Deebo Samuel leaving could drastically impact the output of Trey Lance, right? When you lose a wide receiver with the caliber of Deebo Samuel, now I'm not here to tell you that based off of 1 year, Deebo Samuel is like going to be a perennial, this top tier guy year in and year out. But I really do think that he is going to be very talented, at least for the next couple of years. And if Trey Lance was to have lost Deebo Samuel, that would have really scared me away from Trey Lance. But now it seems like Deebo's all good. I saw a picture of him yesterday, smiling, catching the football. Wow, look at that. Maybe now he's not going to leave. I'm sure that there's probably some
But he
contract
can't leave, man. He doesn't have a choice. They either got to trade him or he's screwed.
Yeah, I guess so. Or maybe he like tries to sit out or something. Maybe he goes to Florida, rides a jet ski, Le'Veon Bell style. You never really know. But
that worked out.
Yeah, it worked out real well. His career did real well after that. But I think that Trey Lance is probably going underdrafted right now. He's going inside of the 8th round, quarterback number 11. I am very excited about Trey Lance. I think he's going to be the guy. But again, like you said, there is still like that outside shot that Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy and that you swung on this pick and the ball was already in the catcher's mitt and you just swung by way too early on him. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm still taking the shot on Trey Lance right now because I genuinely believe he will be the guy and would be shocked by week 1 if Trey Lance wasn't starting. I feel like you don't just invest that heavy of draft capital into a quarterback to stay with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who's just about like the definition of like average, right? Jimmy Garoppolo is nothing special. Trey Lance has the upside to be something very special. And with the rushing upside, you have to be excited about him in fantasy.
I do agree with you. And I think he's a little bit different from the first players we talked about. Like Michael Thomas, I think is drafted kind of in the middle of where his range of outcomes could be. He could either be that bona fide number 1 we saw, or he could not play. Christian Watson to me is being drafted towards the ceiling for him. Like even the number 1 receiver in Green Bay, I project him to be a little run heavy after losing Adams. What is that really worth? With Trey Lance, he is not even projected close to his ceiling. This guy was the number 3 overall pick in the draft. The 49ers traded the house to go get him. And we saw this situation a few years ago with Aaron Rodgers and in Green Bay when they drafted Jordan Love, but it's a little different. Jordan Love was picked in the 20s, so there wasn't quite as much invested in him. He's playing behind the MVP. Jimmy Garoppolo certainly is not even playing close to an MVP level caliber. So with Lance at QB 11, sure, it might be the middle of his range of outcomes, but I think that midpoint is very unlikely. What are the chances he plays like 8 games? To me, it's either 0 or it's like 16. And if he plays 16, we know the rushing equity is so important to fantasy drafts. A player like Jalen Hurts vaulted himself into the top 5 quarterbacks on a weekly basis multiple times last year, even though he wasn't on the most prolific offense. And with Trey Lance, I expect them to be a little bit better than the Eagles were last year. We touched on this yesterday. If we have Trey Lance guaranteed 16 games, I have a really hard time not putting him in at least the top 7, if not the top 6. Like right now, I have him behind Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott. And I've been thinking about even moving him ahead of Tom Brady. Is that crazy?
No, I don't think that's really crazy at all. Tom Brady is basically the only guy that can't rush the football that I could really see being the number 1 quarterback in fantasy just strictly from a passing output, right? He just throws the ball so much every single game, even without Bruce Arians. I don't think that is going to change, but I think it's hard to say you put him inside the top 5, right? Because you got guys like Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was a top 5 quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Trey Lance was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. If what we saw in college is true, if he really does want to, if the coach is calling the plays correctly, then maybe Trey Lance could rush for 800-900 yards. And that wouldn't surprise me if Kyle Shanahan did something like that.
It wouldn't surprise me either. And I think personally, he's one of the most undervalued players on underdog drafts and across the industry right now.
Agreed.
Let's move to a player that's kind of the opposite. I think this is a player being drafted towards the ceiling of his projection, but there's quite a bit of risk, and it's Michael Gallup. He was re-signed in Dallas, and he's going to be their wide receiver 2 when healthy. The question is, when is that going to be? This guy that tore his ACL late in the season, and he didn't have surgery on it right away. I want to highlight that. This wasn't like an immediate recovery timetable. He had surgery in January. So this is a player now that is going to be looking at not an extended recovery window, but it's a little bit delayed. We also know ACLs are a little volatile. You have players coming back as quickly as 6 months. You also have players missing over a year if they end up with a surgery like Odell Beckham. It's just a volatile proposition. So at ADP 113, wide receiver 54, behind CeeDee Lamb clearly, I think Michael Gallup is a player with a ton of risk right now and a player that I'm personally trying to avoid at this ADP. But it comes down to games played. If he ends up playing a full season, he's probably a value. What do you make of Gallup?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you right now. I think people have started to realize also that maybe the injury could be serious. Maybe this does take a lot of time because his ADP and on May 11th was 118.67. And then it rose all the way up to 104 the next week. And then ever since that, it's been dropping and dropping and dropping. It seems like people are starting to catch on to the fact that maybe Michael Gallup is not going to play all 16, 17 games of the season. Now, like you said, if he is fully healthy, maybe he only misses 3-4 games, right? Then I think that where you're drafting Michael Gallup, you're getting him at a discount because you also have to, at least in my opinion, when I'm drafting a guy like Michael Gallup, I'm drafting him knowing the league settings and knowing that I could probably put him on the IR if that is going to be the case that he's going to miss multiple games. And then I can just pick someone up off the waiver wire. But if you are in a league where this guy can't go on the IR, this guy, you don't have an IR spot, and you're just sitting there with a bunch of duds for the first couple of weeks of the season, unless we know in August the true timetable of Michael Gallup's return, I think you can probably just fade him in redraft leagues, especially if it seems like, oh, he's going to miss like 5-6 games if you don't have any IR spot, because just having that 0 on your bench for 5-6 weeks could really be a disaster for your team.
And if you're playing best ball, we can talk about this. In Underdog, you're potentially sitting on a 0 for 8-ish weeks. And again, we don't know this, but from the game theory aspect of this, if you get positive news on Gallup, it's probably going to come in the form of Gallup's ahead of schedule. How much is his ADP going to rise with that news? And that's kind of the clarification. You need to know he's going to play more games. But then again, I wouldn't see him rising into the top 100 just based on he's ahead of schedule. It would really need to come down to like preseason games played. But if you get negative news, like Gallup still like walking with a limp or something like that, I think his ADP plummets. So to me, there's just a lot of downside and not quite as much upside with the player. But what do you think of that? And let me know if you agree.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree with you. I just think that when Michael Gallup is healthy, he is the clear number 2 guy there, right? They draft
Oh,
Jalen
without a
Tolbert.
doubt, without a
They
doubt.
have James Washington, so they have these other guys, but if healthy, I really think Michael Gallup could make a humongous splash and potentially finish as a top, maybe not a top 12 guy, I highly doubt that, but like a top 18 guy, top 24 guy in terms of points per game, because if you miss games, it's basically fucking impossible to finish inside the top 18. So in terms of points per game, I think he could be up there, especially on such a high tempo offense like the Dallas Cowboys. But again, it all has to do with the injury. And that's why monitoring these things are super important, because in August, we probably will have a much better idea on when he's going to come back. Again, these timelines are hit or miss, right? Because the Cowboys might say, oh, he's going to be back by week 4, and then we don't see him until week 9. But there is still at least some clarification that you can get.
And you can say this about a lot of players. It's a unique year where there's about 10 plus players that are dealing with an ACL severe injury that could limit them. We just don't have the information right now. Players that come to mind are like John Mechie, Jameson Williams, Chris Godwin, Robert Tonyan, Logan Thomas, and there's even more that just don't come to me off the top of my head. But there's one last situation I want to talk about here before we head out of here. It's one of these availability situations, but it's not injury related. And it's tight end Rob Gronkowski for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This comes down to retirement. And there has been news this week, at least, that the Tampa Bay front office is optimistic Gronk will be there. This is another situation similar to Lance, where I think Gronk either plays full season or he doesn't play at all, not considering injuries. So to me, Gronk at an ADP of 117.9, basically 118, he's one of the best values in all of draft season right now, if you consider him a lock to play, which to me, it seems to be trending that direction.
Yeah, I brought this up on another video that when me and Savoca were doing a best ball draft, we got him in the 180s range. Now he's all the way up at pick
Unreal.
120. He's tight end 11 off the board, an 11th round pick. I mean, tight end 11 is a slap in the face of what Rob Gronkowski has done. Now, I understand Rob Gronkowski is not 26, right? He's 33 years old.
He's
But
the same age as Kelsey, dude. People
yeah, I
don't
know.
know.
And he doesn't have to be like, he doesn't have to be in training camp. He doesn't have to be there for preseason. If he showed up for week number 1, I would be fully confident that he could score multiple touchdowns in that week number 1 game, right? He doesn't have to be there to understand what to do with Tom Brady. Tom Brady already knows Tom Brady's going to feed this guy the ball. So as long as he is there by August, his ADP is going to rise drastically, right? Right now, like I said, based on what I'm looking at, it's 120.5. He could easily move into the top 7 rounds. To me, I would almost want to rank him as a top 5 tight end. I would knock Kyle Pitts out of the top 5 and throw Gronk in there because Gronk, to me, I just know what Gronk is. Like with Kyle Pitts, you're talking about all this upside. You're talking about him being linked to Marcus Mariota. Like Gronk's linked to Tom Brady on a great offense that throws the ball a million times. So I'm definitely more comfortable with Gronk than I am with Kyle Pitts. Obviously, assuming Gronk is going to be back, which we don't know.
Yeah, I think my rankings are just a little different than you. I think I would also put him at 5 at the expense of Kittle, but it's more volume. Kittle's been incredibly efficient. Kittle was second in yards per route run, but he already had volume concerns with Debo and Ayuk there. Now you move to Lance potentially in a run-heavy offense. There could be even further volume concerns. Pitts,
Definitely.
we know the volume's there. I can't promise you it's going to be efficient volume, but at least you'll see it. When you look at Gronk, I mean, he was 5th in the NFL in yards per route run at the tight end position among all tight ends that had 75 targets. He was ahead of Travis Kelce. He was ahead of Darren Waller. He was ahead of Dalton Schultz, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, TJ Hawkinson. He was ahead of some really good players at the position in terms of efficiency. So this notion that he's fallen off or taken a step back is just laughable to me. And then you look at yards after the catch. He had more yards after the catch than Kyle Pitts. That's unbelievable. He had more yards after the catch than Darren Waller. It's unbelievable for a tight end that's going to be 33. So to me, this notion that he's taken a step back is laughable. He's right on par with the Kelce's and some of the elite tight ends in the NFL. And it would need to be a massive step back efficiency-wise for him to not produce in a full season. Anything else to add with Gronk?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. I think that some people will probably try to talk themselves out of Gronk, like, oh, what if Godwin's healthy? What if Evans is there? Now they have Russell Gage, blah, blah, blah. Don't even listen to that. Just believe that he's Rob Gronkowski. He's going to be healthy. And if he is there, like, man, the sky is really the limit for Gronk. And Gronk was playing, I believe, baseball with Brady like 4 days ago. So,
Gronk's living his best life, doing WrestleMania, playing baseball, making weird commercials. He's doing it all. Love Gronk. Hope he plays. Anticipating it. And to me, that makes him probably a top 3 value in drafts right now with an ADP of 118, tight end 11. That will soar up the board if he gets positive news. But that'll do it for us today. Just 5 players. Plenty of other ones fit this description. So make sure to tune into future videos. And please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel on the way out. Can't tell you how much it helps us. He is Nick Lepri. You can follow him on Twitter at Notorious Fantasy. I am Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again next time.